Welcome to this explainer. I am so thrilled you're here. Okay, today we are going on a serious mission. We're going to decode the entire global economy. But look, instead of staring at complex charts and totally confusing jargon, we're going to do it by stepping into the shoes of an economic detective. We're going to trace the epic, hidden journey of a simple, everyday item. I want you to picture this. You get a craving, you pop into your local corner shop, you grab a chocolate bar off the shelf, you tap your card, and you walk right out. For you, that's what, a 2-minute task. It's completely straightforward. But have you ever stopped to think about the incredible journey that simple chocolate bar took just to get there? The truth is that tiny bar has been on an absolutely epic journey, one that literally crisscrossed the globe, involved thousands of people, and passed through multiple layers of our economy, all just to end up right in your hand. Okay, let's dive into this. We are going to break down this massive economic journey into 5 perfectly organized, easy-to-understand chapters. 1. The purpose of business. 2. The engine of production. 3. 3 sectors of the economy. 4. Ownership and business size. And finally, 5. The ever-changing market. Starting with Chapter 1, the purpose of business, and exactly why businesses exist in the first place. So at their very core, businesses exist to fulfill an opportunity by providing things that people either want or need. And the distinction between these two is fundamental. Needs are your absolute, non-negotiable life essentials, things required for human survival: water, food, clothing, and shelter. Wants, on the other hand, well, those are unlimited. They are the luxuries you can technically survive without, but let's be honest, they make life so much more enjoyable. We're talking designer bags, event tickets, or the newest Xbox console. Because human wants are totally endless, businesses are constantly springing up to produce an incredible, vast variety of items to satisfy them. Now, to satisfy those wants and needs, a business is going to offer either a good or a service. Goods are tangible, physical items, stuff you buy and take home to own, like a computer, a jacket, or a can of Coca-Cola. Services, though, are intangible actions you simply access for a period of time. And here's the brilliant distinction. Think about getting a haircut. When you pay for a haircut, you don't actually take the hairdresser home with you. You are simply paying for their time, their skills, and their expertise. That is the vital difference between a tangible good and an intangible service. Let's move to Chapter 2, the engine of production. What does a business actually need to function? To produce those goods and services, businesses require fuel, which economists call the 4 factors of production. Now, what's really interesting about this is how these 4 completely different elements have to combine. First, you have land, which isn't just physical space. It's the scarce natural resources a business extracts, like gas, oil, or wind power. Then there's labor, the staff and the unique skills they bring to the table. Third is capital. Now, this isn't just money. It's the machinery and equipment needed to get the job done. Maybe that's an industrial oven in a local bakery or a fleet of laptops for an online help desk. And finally, you have enterprise, which is the entrepreneur themselves taking the risk and bringing it all together. But bringing all this together means making some really tough choices. And that leads us to a massive concept: opportunity cost. It is simply the thing you give up in order to choose something else. If an entrepreneur has £5,000 and spends it on a flashy new ad campaign, the opportunity cost is the staff training they can no longer afford. It's incredibly relatable, even outside the business world. Think about a gamer picking a console for their birthday. If you choose the new Xbox, the opportunity cost is that you can no longer play any of the PlayStation exclusive games. Every single choice costs an opportunity. And the person making these tough calls is, of course, the entrepreneur. These folks are incredibly hardworking, highly organized risk takers. They are taking massive risks, sometimes completely giving up a stable, high-paying job to pursue a wild idea. And they don't just do it for financial objectives like profit. They do it for non-financial goals too, like the ultimate independence of being their own boss or setting their own hours. They are literally the glue holding the factors of production together. This brings us to Chapter 3, 3 sectors of the economy. Let's put our detective hats back on and hit the rewind button on our chocolate bar. When we trace it backward, we see exactly how these factors of production move through 3 basic building blocks. Step 1 is the primary sector, the absolute foundation of the supply chain. This is extracting raw materials from the earth, fishing, mining, or farming our raw cocoa beans. Step 2 is the secondary sector. This is manufacturing and construction. It's taking those raw materials and turning them into finished goods, like a factory turning cocoa into chocolate or assembling raw steel into a brand new BMW. Finally, step 3 is the tertiary sector. This sector provides services. It's the retail shop selling you the chocolate, but it's also hairdressers, global banking, and estate agents. Let's move to see how this builds, because this chronological journey actually tells a fascinating story of our history. Back in the 1800s, during the Industrial Revolution, economies were almost entirely dominated by the primary and secondary sectors, farming and factories. Fast forward to the 1980s, and we see an absolute explosion in the tertiary service sector in developed countries. Today, services make up the biggest piece of the economic pie by far, leading us right into this hyper-connected global economy, where all these stages are beautifully and sometimes chaotically intertwined. Now for Chapter 4, Ownership and Business Size. We know what they make and what sector they're in, but let's classify who actually runs the show and how big they are. One critical question splits the entire business world right down the middle. Who owns it? First, we have the private sector. These are businesses owned by individuals or shareholders, and their main goal is generally to make profit. This is everything from your local corner shop to tech giants like Google. Then we have the public sector. This is owned and run by the government. Their primary goal isn't profit, but providing essential services to all of us. Think of the National Health Service or the police force. Both of these sectors play massively important but very distinct roles in our daily lives. And this brilliantly illustrates how we categorize businesses by size. We just look at their employee headcounts. A micro business has 0 to 9 staff. Think of John's Fish and Chip Shop. Then we have SMEs, small and medium enterprises. Small means 10 to 49 staff, like a local independent store. Medium is 50 to 249 staff, like Truffles Bakery. Finally, if you have over 250 employees, you are officially a large business. McDonald's and Poundland fit right in there with their thousands of staff members. That leads us nicely into our final chapter, Chapter 5, the ever-changing market. Because businesses must survive in a wildly dynamic environment. The external pressures facing these entrepreneurs are intense, and they come from 4 main directions. You have technological changes. Businesses have to adapt rapidly to e-commerce and m-commerce because the way we shop on our phones is constantly evolving. Then there are economic changes, like inflation or interest rates suddenly impacting the cost of doing business. Legal changes are huge too. A simple change in minimum wage legislation directly impacts a business's costs and alters how much disposable income the public has to spend. And finally, environmental expectations. Consumers today demand ethical packaging and sustainable transport. If an entrepreneur doesn't adapt to these forces, well, they face failure. And adapting in this modern market means the traditional rules are completely being rewritten. Those neat little sector boxes we put businesses into, they are blurring. Think of a local farm-to-table bakery. They grow their own wheat, that's the primary sector. They bake it into bread, manufacturing, in the secondary sector. And then they serve it to you directly in their shop, that's the tertiary sector. They are operating in all 3 simultaneously. And giant supermarkets are doing this on a massive scale too. They own farms to grow produce, factories to make own-brand ready meals, and they run the checkout aisles. The economic web is incredibly tangled. So, the crucial takeaway from our detective work today is this. The invisible threads of our global economy connect a muddy farm in one country to a humming factory in another, and finally, to the shop right down your street. And as those lines blur, I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on. As more companies cross over into different sectors, does success in the modern market now mean a business must control every single step of the journey, from the farm all the way to the final checkout? It is definitely something to think about the next time you pick up a simple bar of chocolate. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep exploring, and I'll catch you in the next one.